My name is Rita Carlson. I'm 32 years old. And this is the story of how the people who raised me tried to strip away everything I worked for, until I stood up, alone, and changed everything. It began on a humid Saturday morning, one that should have been the happiest day of my life. I stood barefoot in my brand new apartment, still echoing with emptiness, the scent of fresh paint lingering in the air. The hardwood floors were cool under my feet, and sunlight poured through the windows, slicing the white walls into golden patches. I had nothing but a couple of folding chairs, a second-hand coffee table, and my old air mattress. But I'd never felt richer. Done this, all of it, alone. 10 years of clawing my way up from an entry-level accounting job, 10 years of skipping vacations, designer handbags, and Friday night drinks just to squirrel away every dollar. While my friends posted beach photos from the Bahamas, I was home watching YouTube tutorials on budgeting and sipping instant coffee. My apartment cost me $250,000. Small to some, everything to me. I hadn't grown up poor, but I had grown up invisible. My parents adored my younger sister Natalie. She was the pretty one, the soft one, the emotional one. I was the smart one, the one expected to figure things out without help. And I'd figured out how to turn rejection and neglect into fuel. That morning, as I stood in my living room staring at the sunlight kissing the floor, my phone buzzed. It was my mother. "Are you free this Saturday?" she asked sweetly. "We're having a little family get-together. You should come home. There's a surprise." Surprise. The word twisted something in my gut. I knew that tone too well. Syrupy on the surface, laced with pressure underneath. Still I agreed. I even offered to bring the cake. When I arrived, cake box in hand, Natalie opened the front door. She looked like a magazine cover. Makeup flawless, curls bouncing, pregnant belly perfectly framed in a designer dress. "Oh good. You brought Mom's favorite chocolate mousse cake," she squealed, kissing the air near my cheek. The house smelled like roast beef and nostalgia. Same worn rug, same cracked photo frames on the walls. But it no longer felt like home. Just a museum of favoritism. My mother saw me from the kitchen and smiled. Tight, cordial. "Aurora." "Oh, sorry Rita, put the cake on the table." "Natalie, help your sister." She never got my name wrong when I was a kid. But after Natalie became the center of everything, I started feeling like a guest in my own family. I placed the cake on the counter and turned to see my dad. He didn't hug me. Didn't even stand up. Just nodded once and turned back to his brother, Uncle Ed, laughing at something I hadn't heard. I was about to excuse myself when Natalie cleared her throat theatrically. "Everyone," she said, "Kyle and I have an announcement." She placed a hand on her stomach and beamed. "We're moving in together. We've been looking at places nearby." A few ahs rippled through the room. Then came the real punch. "It's just tough financially. And Rita, well, she just bought that lovely 2-bedroom apartment." The room fell quiet. Mom leaned in. "You live alone, sweetheart. And Natalie's pregnant. She needs support. Maybe she and Kyle could stay with you for a while." I blinked. My jaw clenched. "What?" "It's just for a few months," Natalie added quickly. "You won't even notice we're there. It's not like you need the space, right? No one had helped me when I needed it. When I worked 60-hour weeks and ate noodles 3 times a day, no one offered to share a roof or even a meal. And now, after I'd built something for myself, they wanted a piece." Took a breath. "I'm sorry, but no. That apartment is mine. I worked 10 years for it. I'm not giving it up." Natalie's eyes welled instantly. "I can't believe you'd do this to me. To your unborn niece or nephew." Mom's face hardened. "You've changed, Rita. You're not the daughter I was proud of." Then it happened. Before I could say another word, Mom grabbed the cake box I brought, the one I spent $45 on from her favorite bakery, and hurled it. Flat. Cold chocolate, cream, and sponge exploded across my face. Gasps echoed. I stood there, stunned, dripping frosting as everyone froze. Natalie looked down, pretending to sob. But I saw it. The small, smug smile curling at the edge of her lips. "You're no longer my daughter," Mom hissed. And don't you ever come back. My legs moved before my mind could. I walked out the door, cake dripping down my shirt, silence ringing in my ears. No one stopped me. Not even my father. When I got home, I collapsed onto my floor, the same floor I'd scrubbed clean with my bare hands. My shirt was stained with chocolate. My dignity torn to shreds. I stared at the ceiling, phone buzzing non-stop beside me with messages I refused to open. My chest burned, but not from shame, from fury. That was the moment something inside me broke. Or maybe finally clicked. I reached for my phone, opened the browser and typed, "Top real estate lawyer in the city." I wasn't going to cry. I was going to take back everything they stole. The call with the lawyer lasted only 12 minutes, but it was enough to crack open the door to a truth my family hoped I'd never remember. I found his name, Evan Ross, a real estate attorney known for handling high-conflict family property disputes. I barely managed to keep my voice calm as I explained who I was and what I needed. He asked for the will, the one my grandmother left behind. That woman, my dad's mother, was the only person in the family who ever truly saw me. When she passed 3 months earlier, I thought I'd been forgotten in her will. But I hadn't. Her lawyer had called and told me quietly, "Rita, your grandmother left her house to you and your sister, split evenly. She said you're the only one in the family who knows what hard work means." I had nodded numbly then, not understanding what that meant. My parents had moved in and acted like the house was theirs, never once bringing up the will, never once offering to pay me rent, or even acknowledging my part. I hadn't thought much of it at the time. I was busy with renovations, job promotions, life. But now it meant something. I emailed Evan the will that night, along with pictures of the deed and utility bills. All in my parents' names, all unpaid by me. By the next afternoon, he sent a formal demand letter to the house. It stated clearly, either my parents and sister could buy out my half of the property at market rate, or we would take legal action to force a court-ordered sale of the home and split the profits. It was bold. It was brutal. It was mine. That night my phone buzzed until the battery died. Texts from Mom, from Dad, from Natalie, even Kyle. Voicemails ranged from sobbing to threats. I didn't listen to a single one. Instead, I sat by the window of my apartment, the apartment I'd bled for, and stared into the city lights like they were stars I finally reached. Until the next storm hit. Came not by call, not by text, but through Facebook. My mother posted a status that exploded like wildfire. It breaks my heart to say this, but sometimes the ones you raise with love turn out to be the coldest. My daughter Rita is suing us for the house we've lived in for 30 years. All for money. We're heartbroken. And poor Natalie, pregnant and stressed, now has no safe place to stay. The comments were vicious. Hundreds of them. People I hadn't spoken to in years were tagging me, messaging me, calling me every name in the book. What kind of daughter does this? Selfish snake. Hope karma finds her. Close the app. My hands were shaking. I wasn't crying, not yet, but the weight was unbearable. Then came the message from Natalie. "I hope you're happy. You've turned this whole family against you over your stupid apartment. If anything happens to my baby because of this stress, it's on you." I threw the phone across the couch and curled into myself, the silence in my apartment pressing in like a vacuum. That night I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, wondering what kind of monster I had become. And then a smaller voice asked, "Or maybe Rita, you're just finally done being used." The next morning, I walked into Evan's office with bloodshot eyes and a throat sore from silent tears. He was calm, collected, focused. "They've gone public," I said. "They're destroying my name." Evan nodded, steepling his fingers. "Do you want to back out?" "No," I whispered. Then louder. "No. I want you to move forward. Send the sale demand. Let's force the issue." He looked me in the eye. "Rita, once we start this, it will break every bridge left between you and them." I gave a sad smile. "They threw cake in my face and called me a stranger. That bridge burned a long time ago." And just like that, the papers were filed. The mediation was scheduled. 2 weeks later, I walked into a sterile conference room with white walls and soulless lights. I was early. Evan was already there, reviewing a folder thick with documents. "You ready?" he asked without looking up. "I haven't been ready for anything for 10 years, I said. "But I'm here." The door opened. My parents walked in hand, like they were the victims. Natalie followed, pregnant belly leading the way, eyes already brimming with tears. Kyle was last, smug and smirking like he'd already won something. No one greeted me. Evan opened the meeting formally. He explained the terms. The house was legally co-owned by me and Natalie per the will. I wanted my share, either through a payout or a sale. My mother laughed bitterly. "So this is about money. After everything we gave you, this is how you repay us." "You didn't give me anything," I said, my voice calm but cold. "You gave Natalie everything. I earned my apartment. I never took a cent. I won't apologize for not giving away what I built." Natalie sniffled dramatically. "I just don't understand how you can look me in the eye and tell me you want to throw a pregnant woman on the street." Kyle added, "She's your sister, Rita. You're heartless." I turned to him. "You've lived off my parents for years. Now you want to live off me too." He went red. My father slammed the table. "Enough. Rita, we are your family. You will destroy us over what? Some real estate." Evan interjected. "It's not just real estate, Mr. Carlson. It's legally her property. And you've occupied it rent-free for years without compensation. That ends now." Silence. Then the number. "The house is valued at $340,000, Evan said. "Rita's share is $170,000. Pay it or we move to a forced sale." My mom's eyes narrowed. "That money will be your legacy, Rita. And you're throwing it away. You'll regret this. One day you'll wake up and realize you've lost everyone." I looked at her with all the hurt of 3 decades in my chest. "I already have." They didn't agree. They didn't budge. They stood up, left the room, and slammed the door so hard the glass trembled. But I didn't flinch. 'Cause I knew what came next. Or consequences. Closure. The lawsuit went forward. Officially. Publicly. Legally. Within days of our failed mediation, Evan filed the case in housing court. He requested an order to force the sale of the property my grandmother left to both Natalie and me. The documents were airtight. The will was clear. But it didn't stop my parents from doubling down. Not in court but online. They went nuclear. My mother's Facebook post went from dramatic to outright defamatory. She shared childhood photos of me with captions like, "We loved her so much. We gave her everything. And now she's suing us while her sister is pregnant and helpless. How can a daughter become so heartless?" The comment section grew by the hundreds. And then thousands. People who'd never met me wrote paragraphs. "Some people care more about property than people. If my daughter ever did this to me, I'd disown her too. Money changes people." They didn't know me. They didn't know the moldy basement I slept in at 16 while Natalie got a queen-sized room with a vanity and walk-in closet. They didn't know about the job I worked at Wendy's to buy my own SAT prep books, or the time I begged my parents for help with college rent and Mom said, "We're saving for Natalie's gap year." But none of that mattered now. Because in the court of public opinion they were winning. And I was being buried. Lauren, my one true friend, messaged me constantly. "Don't respond. Don't fight online. Let the evidence speak in court." But I couldn't stop the bleeding. My job even pulled me aside. "Rita," my manager said, "we're getting some attention from social media. We support you, but if this becomes disruptive." He nodded. Understood. They wouldn't fire me. But I was becoming a liability. That night, alone in my apartment, I cried harder than I had in years. My reflection in the darkened window looked foreign, tired, hollow-eyed, bruised in ways no one could see. And then something inside me snapped. Not with rage. With clarity. If they were going to drag my name through the mud, then maybe it was time I showed the world who I really was. Called Evan. Can we go public? He paused. You want to make a statement? No, I said. I want to tell my story. That same night, I created a new Facebook page. Not under my name but under the title, Rita's Truth, the other side of the story. And I posted everything. The will. Screenshots of the legal documents. Emails. Timeline. Even old photos. Me at 16, bagging groceries while Natalie posted bikini pics from Mallorca. Me graduating college alone, while my parents vacationed with her in Hawaii. The post went viral within 48 hours. Because I wasn't angry. I was calm. Truthful. I wrote. I never wanted this fight. I begged for peace. I bought my apartment without a cent of help. Paid my way through life. And now they're calling me selfish because I refused to hand over everything I worked for. This isn't revenge. This is me protecting myself for the first time. The response. Instant. This changes everything. I stand with Rita. She was never selfish. She was surviving. The tide began to turn. People who had blindly supported my mother started deleting their comments. Even some of her own cousins reposted my story. Lauren called me the next morning screaming into the phone. It's working. Rita, you did it. People are listening. And they were. Even local reporters reached out asking for interviews. But I declined. This wasn't about publicity. It was about accountability. Court hearings were set. Evan was preparing everything. We were in the final stretch. Until Natalie made a move I hadn't seen coming. She filed for sole ownership of the house. Claiming emotional distress. Claimed the baby's safety was at risk. Claimed I was threatening her mental health by trying to force a pregnant woman into homelessness. Evan called me immediately. It's a play for sympathy. She has no legal footing. But it might delay the process. I didn't care about delays anymore. Cared about truth. So I showed up to court not in silence, but in power. I wore the same suit I bought after my first bonus check, the one I saved up for when everyone else bought party dresses. I walked in with Evan at my side, not as the villain in some sob story, but as a woman who had earned every square inch of her life. And as Natalie sobbed on the stand, claiming I was destroying her life, Evan pulled out printed records of every expense I'd ever paid for a loan, every time my parents denied help, every instance I was left behind. He ended with a single line from my grandmother's will. To Rita, I leave half the house, because she is the only one who's ever stood on her own 2 feet. The judge listened. Questions. Read the will. Reviewed the documents. And then he looked at me. Miss Carlson, he said, the law is clear. You have every right to your share of the property. The court grants the motion to force a sale. All proceeds shall be split 50-50 between you and your sister. I didn't cry. I just breathed for the first time in years. Outside the courtroom, my parents didn't say a word. My mother wouldn't even look at me. Natalie's mascara was running down her cheeks, but her eyes still gleamed with entitlement. Kyle was silent, hands stuffed in his pockets. They walked past me like I was the stranger. But I wasn't. I was the woman who finally said no. The sale took 3 weeks. 3 tense, lawyer-filled, emotionally explosive weeks. My parents tried every delay tactic in the book. We need more time. The baby's due soon. Can't we find another buyer? But the court order was clear. The house had to be sold, and the proceeds split down the middle. $340,000. That's what it finally sold for. I remember sitting at the lawyer's office, signing the paperwork with a pen that trembled slightly in my grip. Evan sat beside me, calm as ever, like this was just another Tuesday. But for me, it was the final chapter in a life I hadn't even realized I needed to leave behind. After taxes, fees, and closing costs, my cut came to $175,000. A number that looked surreal on a check with my name on it. Rita Carlson. Not Natalie's sister. Not the family disappointment. Just me. When I walked out of that building and into the spring air, I didn't feel triumphant. Felt still. As if the noise of the last 32 years had suddenly gone quiet. I went home to my apartment, the same apartment my family said was too big for one person, the one they tried to take. I sat cross-legged on my floor, the check untouched on the table beside me, and I just breathed. For the first time, my breath didn't hitch with guilt or fear or shame. I wasn't sure what to do with the money. Not yet. Lauren called that night. So, champagne or whiskey? What are we celebrating with? I laughed, the sound foreign to my own ears. Maybe tea, I said. I'm still letting it all settle. You did it, Rita, she whispered. You actually did it. Did I? Because something about winning still felt like losing. My family was gone. By blood we were still tied. But in every other way, the thread had snapped. My phone was quiet now. No more threats, no more guilt trips. Just silence. And then 2 weeks later, Lauren knocked on my door, eyes wide. I just heard, she said. You're not going to believe this. I raised an eyebrow. What? Natalie and Kyle. They're in trouble. Big trouble. Apparently, after the house sold, they took their half, $175,000, and bought a small home out in the suburbs. Nothing flashy, but with Natalie not working and Kyle's freelance gigs drying up, they couldn't afford the mortgage. Worse, Kyle had apparently maxed out credit cards trying to furnish the house like it was a lifestyle blog. Leather couches, smart fridges, a $3,000 crib. All show. No stability. 3 months in, the bank was knocking. They were already behind on payments. Natalie had just given birth, and Kyle was now begging old friends for loans on Venmo. Lauren pulled out her phone, showing me the posts. Natalie had written a long, teary Facebook status. I never imagined that becoming a mother would be this terrifying. With no family support, a newborn in my arms, and a house slipping away, I feel like I'm drowning. No mention of the $175,000 she had just received. No mention of the house she and Kyle bought with money I helped earn. Just more performative pain. More bait for sympathy. I sat on the couch, staring at the floor. I should have felt vindicated. I should have laughed, maybe even gloated. But instead I felt a strange, hollow ache. Not because I pitied them, but because I understood them. In a way they never understood me. They didn't know what sacrifice was. Not really. And they still didn't know how to survive without leeching off someone else. Lauren turned to me. Rita, you're not thinking of helping them, are you? I shook my head firmly. No. I'm just processing. She squeezed my hand. Good. Because they wouldn't have helped you. And she was right. That night I wrote a letter. No one would ever read it. But I had to get it out of me. Dear Mom, I'm sorry I wasn't the daughter you wanted. I'm sorry I was born independent and stubborn and too proud to beg. I'm sorry I made you uncomfortable by standing on my own. But I'm not sorry I walked away. I hope you learned something from this. I hope Natalie does too. But whether you do or not, I'm done paying for your comfort with my silence. Sincerely, the daughter who finally chose herself. Then I took that letter, folded it neatly, and set it on fire in the sink. I watched the paper curl and blacken until it was nothing but ash. Just like my guilt. The next morning I went to the bank and deposited the check. Then I called my landlord from my old rental unit, the one I lived in for 7 years, the one they still hadn't replaced the broken heater in, and asked if it was for sale. It was. Cheaply too. The new tenants had backed out last minute. By noon I made an offer. Full cash payment. By Friday, I was the new owner of the building where I once froze under 3 layers of blankets. It was poetic. I hired contractors, cleaned it up, modernized it, fixed everything the landlord never cared to touch. 3 months later, I listed the 3 upper units as affordable rentals for young women starting their careers. Students, new graduates, women clawing their way through underpaid jobs and overpriced apartments. Women like me. And I kept the bottom unit for myself. I didn't need luxury. I needed freedom. The kind my family never gave me. And that I finally gave to myself. 3 months passed like the quiet hum of a new life. I spent my days working my full-time job and my nights pouring heart and sweat into the old rental building I now owned. It felt strange at first, walking the halls of a place that had once been my prison, but now held keys instead of chains. I picked out warm paint colors, installed energy-efficient windows, and even added new mailboxes with names I didn't yet know. When the first tenant moved in, a shy young woman fresh out of grad school, I left her a note and a small houseplant on the kitchen counter. "Welcome to your first place. You're not alone here." She cried when she read it. I knew that feeling. I didn't want applause or attention. I just wanted to be the person I never had. And in that I was finding peace. Lauren came by often. She brought Chinese takeout, her dog, and sometimes a bottle of wine when the days felt particularly heavy. She was the only one who knew everything. The legal war, the social media circus, the late-night sobs. "You know," she said one night while we sat on my small porch, legs stretched out, "what you did wasn't just brave. It was unheard of. Most people would have caved." I smiled faintly. Most people didn't grow up being told they were never enough. She nodded, clinking her glass against mine. "Still, you didn't just escape. You built something better." I thought that was the end of it. That the saga had closed with a clear line drawn between the past and the present. But life has a way of testing the strength of our boundaries. It was a Sunday morning. The air was crisp with late autumn chill, and I had just settled into my favorite chair by the window with a book and a cup of tea. The wind rattled the window panes slightly, and leaves danced like gold coins across the street. Then the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. I opened the door cautiously, and froze. Natalie stood there. Her hair was messy, pulled into a bun. No makeup. Her eyes, red-rimmed and hollow. And in her arms, wrapped in a worn pink blanket, was a baby. Her baby. For a full 5 seconds, neither of us said a word. Then she whispered, "Hi, Rita." I didn't move. I didn't know where else to go, she said, voice cracking. "Please don't close the door." I should have. I had every right to. But I didn't. I stepped aside. She walked in slowly, cradling the baby like a fragile piece of herself. I noticed the stains on her shirt, the shaking of her hands. She hadn't come to perform this time. I watched her sit on the edge of my couch, holding her baby tighter, as if afraid I'd ask her to leave. "I'm not here to fight," she said quickly. "I swear. I didn't know who else to turn to." I stayed standing, arms crossed. "Why now?" She looked up at me, shame flickering behind her tired eyes. "Kyle left 2 weeks ago. He said he couldn't take the stress. That I was too much. He emptied the joint account. The mortgage is months behind. I've called every friend I have. No one will help." I didn't say anything. "I know what I did. What we all did. I know how we treated you," she continued, her voice low and raw. "I came here because you're the strongest person I know. And because I thought maybe, just maybe, you'd still care." It was a blow I wasn't prepared for. Because some part of me did still care. Not for the manipulation. Not for the lies. But for the little girl I once shared a bunk bed with. For the baby now sleeping soundly in her arms, unaware of the chaos she'd been born into. But I wasn't the same sister she remembered. "You didn't just treat me badly, Natalie," I said slowly. "You tried to take from me what little I had left. You stood by while Mom threw cake in my face. You watched them destroy my name." She flinched. "I know," she said. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed to try." I looked at her. Really looked at her. For once there was no smugness. No performative grief. Just a woman broken by the weight of her own choices. I walked into the kitchen. Poured a glass of water. Handed it to her. "You and the baby can stay here for 2 nights. Just 2. After that I'll help you find temporary housing. But you're not moving in. And I'm not fixing everything for you." She blinked rapidly, swallowing hard. "You'd do that. After everything." "I'm not doing it for you," I said softly. "I'm doing it for the baby." She deserves a better start than we had. Her shoulders sagged. Thank you, Rita. I thank you. I nodded, then stood. I'll grab some sheets. That night, as I lay awake, I didn't feel triumphant or vindicated. Felt something else. Because helping Natalie didn't make me weak. Made me free. I was no longer trying to prove myself to people who never valued me. I was simply living by my own standards. The next morning I made scrambled eggs, toast, and a strong pot of coffee. Natalie sat silently at the dining table, her baby cradled in one arm, the other hand shaking slightly as she lifted her cup. She looked like a woman who hadn't slept in weeks. I didn't press her for details. I didn't want to know everything. I just needed to know she understood the limits. After today, I said gently, we'll call a few women's shelters and temporary housing programs. Some of them offer grants and job support for single mothers. She nodded. Thank you, she whispered. You didn't have to do any of this. No, I replied. I didn't. But this isn't about the past. It's about breaking the cycle. She looked down at her baby, eyes watery. I don't want her to grow up like we did. And for a brief moment we sat in that rarest thing, shared truth. By the third day we had a plan. I helped her file paperwork for government support, found a temporary living facility that accepted mothers with infants, and even handed her $500 cash to tide her over. Not from guilt, not from obligation, but from compassion I could afford now. She packed her things quietly. When she was ready to go, she looked at me with eyes that had lost some of their entitlement and found something more human. I'll never forget this, she said. Even if Mom and Dad never speak to me again. And that's when it happened. She didn't know they already knew. Later that night my phone buzzed. Block number. Voicemail. I let it go. Few minutes later another call. Then another. Then a text. I heard what you did. So you'll help her but not your parents. Disgusting. What happened to family, Rita? What happened to loyalty? Mom again. We needed your help too. You turned your back on us and ran to the one person who betrayed you. I stared at the screen in disbelief. For a second I wanted to laugh. They hadn't changed. They still saw help as a right. Not a gift. They still saw me not as a person but as a resource. I didn't respond. But the next morning the backlash hit. Mom made another Facebook post. So proud of our daughter for taking in her sister and the baby. Too bad she still refuses to help her own elderly parents who are being evicted soon. She has all the money and our house, but no heart. And just like that the hate returned. It didn't matter that the house wasn't theirs. It didn't matter that they'd chosen to give everything to Natalie and neglect me for years. None of that fit the narrative they needed. Lauren called again. They're dragging you. Again. He nodded. I know. Want me to post the receipts? I still have screenshots. No, I said. Let them talk. She was quiet for a beat. Are you sure? Yeah, I said. I know the truth. That's enough. But it wasn't the end. 2 weeks later, I received a formal letter. My parents were attempting to contest the will. Their lawyer claimed my grandmother was not of sound mind when she wrote it. They were trying to undo the house sale, reverse the court decision, and invalidate my inheritance. I stared at the envelope for a long time. It was pure desperation. But it was also war. Called Evan immediately. He sighed, unsurprised. I'll handle it. Don't worry, Rita. This kind of motion almost never holds. Especially not this late. But they're still trying, I said quietly. They're hoping to wear you down, he replied. They want to make you regret standing up for yourself. I didn't cry this time. I didn't even shake. I just felt done. Not defeated, just done. I sent a single email to their lawyer the next morning. You will find the original will, court order, and deed attached. I will not be responding further. This is harassment, and if it continues, we will file a restraining order. CC'd Evan. Then hit send. And just like that I chose peace again. For weeks I heard nothing. Then one day a letter arrived. Handwritten. From my mother. I sat with it in my lap for nearly an hour. Then I tossed it, unopened, into the trash. Some things don't deserve to be reopened. I wasn't that hungry little girl anymore, begging for approval. I wasn't the exhausted 20-something sacrificing sleep, sanity, and self-worth to keep everyone else comfortable. I wasn't the daughter who would give away her only home just to hear, "I'm proud of you." I was Rita Carlson. Independent. Whole. Unapologetic. And I had nothing left to give to those who only knew how to take. Months passed. The seasons turned. Snow fell lightly across the edges of my windows. The baby I once held in my arms for a few trembling minutes the day Natalie left had probably grown into a giggling infant by now. I didn't know. We hadn't spoken since. Not out of anger. But because I'd given her something most people in our family never could. A clean break. I never heard from my parents again. No more calls. No more letters. No more Facebook attacks. Their attempt to contest the will was thrown out by the court within weeks. According to Evan, their lawyer never even showed up to the final hearing. It ended not with a bang, but with silence. A silence that, this time, felt like freedom. I poured myself into my work, into my little rental property, and into helping the 3 tenants who now called it home. I repainted the hallway walls a soft cream, added potted plants on each landing, and hosted a small welcome potluck in the shared courtyard. We swapped stories over chili and cornbread, and for the first time in years, I felt a warmth I hadn't known I was missing. Community. Real, chosen community. Lauren stayed by my side through it all. We took long weekend drives just outside the city, talked about life, about how much had changed. One day, over coffee, she looked at me with a sly smile. "You know," she said, "I never told you this, but I think you saved me too." And blinked. "Me?" She nodded. "Watching you stand up for yourself, it made me realize I was letting people walk all over me too. Work. In relationships. I left my last boyfriend, by the way." Smiled. "Good. He always called you woman like it was your name." We both laughed until our stomachs ached. And in that moment, I understood something I hadn't before. My strength wasn't just mine. It rippled, echoed, gave others permission. I began journaling more, writing every morning before work and every night before bed. First it was just for me. But one day, on a whim, I submitted a short piece to an online women's magazine about generational trauma and the myth of the selfish daughter. They published it, then asked for more. I wrote about housing, about dignity, about emotional manipulation masked as love. I wrote about what happens when the people who are supposed to protect you treat your boundaries like betrayal. And people responded. Emails poured in from women across the country. Some older than me. Some just starting out. Some still trapped in the middle of the chaos I had only just escaped. "Thank you for saying what I couldn't. I thought I was alone. You gave me the courage to say no." One email came from a girl named Clarissa, 22 years old, recently disowned for refusing to give her parents her student loan refund check. They told me I was selfish, that I didn't care about family. But reading your story, I realized, maybe I'm not the villain. Maybe I'm just finally choosing myself. I cried reading that one. 'Cause that had been me once. Near the end of that year, on a rainy November afternoon, I got an envelope in the mail. No return address. I hesitated for a second before opening it. Inside was a simple folded card. And a photo. Natalie. Holding her baby. No filters, no flair. Just a mother and daughter on a park bench. On the back of the photo were 5 words, written in her looping cursive. "She'll know your name, Rita." I didn't cry. I didn't call her. I didn't write back. But I placed the photo inside a drawer in my writing desk, not as a keepsake, but as a reminder. A reminder that sometimes the best thing you can do for others is to heal yourself first. I ended that year with new furniture, new memories, and new peace. On Christmas Eve, Lauren and I hosted a dinner for our building. Homemade lasagna, cheap wine, twinkle lights strung between windows. Our tenants brought dishes their mothers taught them. Someone's boyfriend played guitar. Someone's kid fell asleep in a beanbag chair. And me. I sat on my couch, wrapped in a soft fleece blanket, watching it all unfold like a dream I hadn't dared to imagine just a year ago. I didn't have my parents, but I had peace. I didn't have Natalie, but I had boundaries. And for the first time in my life I had me. Whole. Undiminished. Unapologetically mine. Rita Carlson's story isn't just about revenge. It's about reclamation. She reclaimed her space, her dignity, and her voice. In a world that often shames women for saying no, she dared to say it loudly, clearly, and with finality. Her journey is a reminder that being called selfish by those who benefit from your silence is the surest sign you're finally doing something right. If you were moved by Rita's story, let us know your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever been made to feel guilty for choosing yourself? How did you find your strength? And don't forget to subscribe to Revenge Echoes for more powerful true-to-life stories that speak louder than revenge.